Yeah, I mean, if you put work in your games, even with, I mean, even when using Wizordum, you can make like something special with it.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Well, the
But
original Total Chaos, wasn't it? That was in GC Doom, and you would never ever guess that it was because
Right.
it literally
Exactly.
looks almost. When you compare it, of course, to the remake, you can see that it's not. But I think a lot of the problems that GC Doom faces I believe, it's licensing problems, not licensing problems per se, but getting on console, let's say.
Yeah.
Because that's what the majority of kind of like, I don't want to say layman, but just covering the Xboxes and the PlayStations and that sort of thing. They don't give a damn about your game engine. It's people like you and I that talk game engines.
Yeah.
If their game was on PlayStation or something, that would become a new normal for them. They would never question it. And side note, the world needs more build engine games. It's my favorite game engine.
Hear, hear.
It is good.
I agree, yeah. I think we need more in build engine to this very day. Or honestly, even just like, just push, like, take that build engine style tech and just, put it in something else as well. Because it's just like, I think it's just the combination of, that everything's so interactable. It was something very different at the time, and even today, there's very few games that are that interactable that are not like immersive sims, pretty much, or an RPG. Are typically, but it was just very interactable. That's something I absolutely love about like Duke Nukem. It's just almost everything, even things you wouldn't think that you could interact with, you can interact with them, and that was just really cool for me.
Yeah. There was a time when the build engine was the most licensed engine in the game industry, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it was being used way more than like because we had it in a bunch of games. There was like 3 or 4 games released with it before we even released Duke Nukem 3D. That sort of, we licensed the engine, and somehow they beat us out the door. Well, the somehow is they didn't do a great game. Is the secret to how they got out so fast.
That's fair.
But yeah, and so there was 3 or 4 games before. Then we were involved with 4 of them, with Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, Blood, and a game called Runes that eventually came out as Power Slave. Then there was a bunch of little side games that were done. So there was a time where we were ahead of the pack. We were the Unreal of that little 1 or 2 year era.
Was Redneck Rampage in build?
Yeah.
That was a build. Yeah.
What's your favorite build engine? I know you're probably going to say Duke Nukem, but I'm like looking past that. You said you were involved in so many of them. Do you have like a second favorite?
We ended up selling the rights to Blood about a year into development to Monolith, and looking back, I wish we wouldn't have done that, because I loved working with Nick Newhard on that project. He was the lead developer who originally came to us with the idea, and we funded the project and gave him the engine to use.
And he's back at Apogee now, actually.
Yeah, we just made a deal with him a couple of weeks ago to where he's going to help consult him on an unannounced horror game that we're doing. But if I were, looking back, I wish that we would have kept the rights to that game and stuck with it, and because I would pick that as number 2.
Okay, yeah, I think a lot of people tend to, when you talk about build engine, they'll always cite Blood and Duke Nukem. Shadow Warrior is kind of there along with them. It's a fan favorite. Everyone's like, if you have to show someone this game engine or one of the best games from this era,
9 times out of 10, I feel like,
But he's got so much personality, though, isn't it? It comes through the screen. Caleb is kind of cool in a subdued way, whereas Duke Nukem is like, I'm here, love me.
Actually, so I have a good question for Scott. Do you think that it's ever possible that like Gearbox will allow anyone else to attempt to make a Duke Nukem game one day? Do you think that's even in the realm of possibility?
I think that's what they want to do, honestly. I think that back when I was still talking to Randy, which goes back 10 plus years ago, his whole game plan, it seemed, if I remember this right, was that they weren't going to do it internally because they were basically focused on Borderlands. And at the time, I think they were also doing Battleborn. But in any case, his whole idea was they don't really think they're going to do it internally, but they'd love to find an external studio who has the chops, has the experience, has the passion behind it. But I think the problem with Duke Nukem now is that, it's still for the most part a single player style game. And, I think that you're looking at a $20 to $30 million budget at least to make something that I think Randy wants to make.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money to put into a single player game. And so I kind of think that Duke Nukem is we're not going to see any Duke Nukems anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's the sad reality of it. But I still would love to see one though. Like, it'd be great. But I think it would be, especially for Gearbox, it'd be kind of a hard sell for 2K, because I think they're pretty heavily. I don't know, actually. I feel like they might own Gearbox, or I don't know. There's a whole thing with that, but since 2K is very heavily involved with them,
yeah. Maybe they'll do a multiplayer game or something with Shelley Harrison, and then there's John Blade or something was in Phantom Fury as well. There's some sort of shared universe that I'm sure they can tap into, and we can all complain about how everything is multiplayer nowadays instead of single player.
So you help a lot with the development of games, Mayo, but when are you making yours?
I have an idea. I've actually pitched to Scott. I don't know. I have a concept of a horror game. I would love to make a horror game, but I'm not a game creator. I'm not a director. I don't know how to program. I have some ideas for some things I think might be fun. I don't know how much further it goes than that, but I don't think a game created by Under the Mayo is a title you'll be seeing anytime soon.
Right. Okay, then. So
maybe I'll get a credit for maybe I'll get a
Mayo
credit
games.
for like the game concept or something like that. But like me being like the director, me being a director, I don't see it happening.
Gotcha.
How did you come up with the art style? We touched on it before, how it's so distinctive. You can literally take a screenshot and that it's that game here. Yeah. How did you come up with that?
Okay, it's really simple, actually. I mean, I was talking about one-day prototype at the beginning, right? And I was needing some textures, and I'm also a pixel artist. I'm not the best one, but I can do some stuff. And I needed some textures for that prototype. And usually when I start working on some pixel art piece, whatever it is, I pick some predefined color palette, right? So I just there's this site with pixel art color palettes. I just picked one and I just started drawing textures, and that's it. So what makes the visual style special is that I'm only using like 32 colors for the game. So it's for all the textures, for all the sprites, for the weapon sprites. Of course, we have you have the diminished lighting and stuff like that. This is not part of the colors I'm talking about, but for the sprites and textures, I'm using 32 colors palette, and that's it. And I think because of it, the game has such visual style, right?
Yeah, just a distinct palette.
Yeah.
It's quintessentially of the era that we remember growing up. Those of us of my age, I mean, in terms of like the 90s and stuff, when we were playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo and they didn't have many colors compared to modern games here, it harks back to that particular era, and you can feel it when you're playing it as well. You feel like you're playing a game back when you were, I was born in 1980, so I was a teenager when these games came out, on Nintendo and stuff, and it literally feels like the same sort of feeling that you get. I think you've managed to not only create something that looks of the era, but something that feels of the era as well. And that's coming that's coming from someone that lived through the era. I'm not like a Gen Z, that's playing a boomer shooter, imagining a game before I was born. I'm talking from personal experience. Yeah.
Right.
Feels very personal when you said that. I don't really know why. No, but I feel the same way as someone who didn't grow up with those kind of games. But I did play a lot of Super Nintendo and a lot of older games when I was growing up as well.